Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Feels like barely a week goes by without some big news somewhere in the WoW universe at the moment, and just over the last week Blizzard have once again compounded their choice to make active changes to World of Warcraft Classic. Not exactly massive game breakers, but certainly going back on some of the core tenets that they had tried to uphold thus far in the game. Speaking personally, and I believe quite a few of you guys may be on the same side as me, no changes didn't quite pan out as expected. In fact, we ended up with a lot of some changes, and they vary in of themselves, from quite minor things like the removal of the exit portals in Battlegrounds, not a big deal, just type /AFK, right? To much larger things like layering or server size. On top of this, remember those recent changes that were planned for the next patch? Blizzard fixing the weapon totem talent, which wasn't done until TBC, also making it so that hunters benefit from attack power on world buffs. A pure change that has seemingly received next to no negative feedback. Has the time for changes being readily accepted really started to become a thing finally? These are small steps, don't get me wrong, but if Blizzard are capable of doing this now, well in advance of TBC, showing that they are willing to make changes too, and not only that, but getting it right so far at least, this will go a long way to build some confidence that in the event we do go into TBC with a full-on let's do changes mindset, that hopefully we can trust Blizzard a little bit more to make the correct changes then. Even still, it being World of Warcraft, it will always be a bit of a pain point to say who is right to make the call on these things. There isn't any direct link between the developer and the player like there is in old school RuneScape, for example, with the polling system, where the majority of the game updates must pass a 70% player vote in favour in order to enter the game. So let's take a look at the most recent changes, of which there are even more that didn't exist in vanilla, see why they were done, and more importantly, why now? It's so late into Classic, right? Anyways, here they are, posted a little over 1 week ago now. The discoloration with the Warrior 2.5 shoulders is finally getting looked into. I've seen more than just a few posts about that. Certain exploit positions in Warsong Gulch removed. Not too sad to see these go, to be honest. After having been done with ranking now and seeing some of the parkour people pulled off, it really does feel a bit excessive. Then again, no doubt people will tell me this is the meta in the battleground now, as it's been solved over 16 years, right? Partial resist on damage over time effects, snapshotting. I remember seeing this happening actually while leveling the priest, and they actually made it so dropping an infernal on someone in Cenarian Hold doesn't bring guard aggro anymore. No word on the actual save spot though, I bet that's still there. But without a doubt, the most important change of this patch, the Lionheart of Stormwind can finally drop. An epic so coveted, an item so powerful that I've literally not seen anyone mention that it isn't dropping anywhere on the internet, the forums, the Reddit, discussion, just at all. For real though, 1% chance to proc 250 armor on party for 30 seconds, that's literally worse than rank 1 in a fire. It's worse than rank 3 Devotion Aura. And that's a permanent buff. I guess it's going to be an easy Nexus Crystal. Okay, for real though, the big change here is that weapon procs that were currently blocked by GCD usage is being removed. Once again, I'd like to share the post. There is some pretty interesting ideas going about here. Continuing with the patch 1.13.6, we will be removing the data flag that prevents many items such as Nightfall and so on from proccing while the bearer is on global cooldown. Dust off your Nightfalls, procs are back on the menu. Makes me a happy caster. We are still reasonably sure the data flag was set on at least some of these items for a reason, but we're never really able to pin down exactly what that reason was. The post then goes on to explain how even with these changes it will not massively impact endgame level content. So not being able to say with 100% certainty why these items behave the way they did, we made a call and decided to err on the side of fun. I'd like to think having my weapons proc is pretty fun. If they say they're gonna do that, I totally agree. And at the end of the day, we know that perfect authenticity is ultimately impossible, and at least we can do our best to keep Classic fun and in the spirit of the original game. That's a real big line to end off the post with, and I really like this kind of communication from the dev team. Perfect authenticity is impossible, but we can do our best to keep Classic in the spirit of the original game. Yes, this is the outlook. This is what I'd love to see more of going forwards. A pure carbon copy may be impossible to achieve, perhaps more so for vanilla than other expansions given the available data, but that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice fun for authenticity. Look at the fan server scene for TBC. All of them are packed with changes to make the game more fun for faction balance, content pacing, raid tuning, and so on. The fact that Blizzard are now willing to make these changes is great. It's just Phase 6 is in about a week, and just now, Nightfall is actually going to be working as it reads on the tooltip. The devs may be players themselves and be cautious about making changes, which I'm not surprised at all, given the whole no changes stuff at launch, but each step towards a positive change holds good promise for the future, I hope. The info on what kind of things in TBC are or become issues are very well documented at this point. Fan servers have done the expansion over and over again. They held influence in Classic, or at least to make the push for it to exist. Why not do the same for the future of the game? It's all well and good things being fixed or bugs being removed, but it does need a bit more speed. At the end of the day, an expansion has a sell-by date on it. Every single one of them does, but they can be remodeled, rebalanced, and re-released. And from the feedback you see almost anywhere, much like the ranged attack power changes, the vast majority of it is positive. People like this kind of thing, and I'm not surprised at all. I mean, since when does an MMO have this few balance and bug patching phases as we've seen in Classic? Quite literally, never. I think people would be totally up for more significant changes too, even the likes of class balance. That would impact the endgame, however. But even though there is change coming in, most of them don't affect TBC. At all, in fact. It makes you wonder whether these changes are laying the groundwork for TBC, or whether they are setting the scene for fresh Classic servers at some point. Now, I can certainly see the appeal of fresh, the brand new economy, equal footing for all players. Now you've seen the content through once, you have a much better idea of what to do now in the second time around. And just to see the early game again where crafting, organic world PvP, dungeons, achievements, all these other bits of the game matter a whole lot more again. Fan servers have been living off the fresh hype for years and years, and they're still going strong. Well, not so much the vanilla scene anymore, but for TBC and Wrath of the Lich King, yes, big time. I can't help feeling they do attract a bit of a different type of player to the game though. I know personally I'm pretty attached to my character and characters now that I've built up over time. I like the progression, and part of me couldn't imagine throwing all that time I put into them away to start all over again with any real prospect of playing the game for maybe more than a couple of weeks or disappearing around the first raid tier. Answer me this, if Classic was released again, fresh, with the same exact content pacing and patch progression as it was back when it first did in 2019, would you play it again? I may if I didn't have much else going on, but I wouldn't be too keen on it. What about Classic Fresh had the patch changes we have up to now, including whatever else is put in Phase 6, like the Hunter attack power changes from world buffs, weapon GCD procs, battleground exit portals, and so on. It's an improvement, but a very small improvement. I don't think I'd change my mind from the previous response. What if we had no spell batching, melee leeway, tuned up raids, changes to AV and pre-mades, world buff changes, XP nerfs winning groups with higher level players, maybe AoE caps, class balance or progressive iterations on talents or gear? Now you have me a bit more intrigued. One of the most interesting things you can do to a really well old-souled game that's been mathed out forever is to completely break the meta. Look at how old school RuneScape's done recently with their in-game league, which makes you only be able to play in certain areas of the game. It's never been more popular. Notice how all of these issues are core to Classic that would totally change the game up as how it's played, but they can still be well within the spirit of the game. When I think of Classic, I don't think world buffs boosting and pre-mades. I think of the RPG things like ammo or pets or poisons, getting your epic mount at 60, and just the grind towards various rewards and finally hitting that goal. I think if this kind of thing were to happen, it's important that the servers are seasonal, and the content is accelerated more so than it already has been by today's standards, whilst we have the progressive main game running alongside it. Otherwise you end up with, does this seasonal server progress to TBC? I think it'd create too many different games trying to run at the same time. Give seasonal servers a much shorter life cycle and just go wild with changes on them, because there'll be another one down the line, as in about a 4 to 8 month life cycle at the high end. I reckon this format would do much better than a pure re-release of Classic, like a lot better. But that's coming from me, somebody who has my main, who has all my alts, and I have no real interest in abandoning my main. I would say this kind of thing. I know a lot of people who would happily jump into a carbon copy of Classic Fresh to get that new server feel again, but I think seasonal servers would do that too, as well as providing a new type of endgame that isn't loot pinatas, raid logging, and pre-mading. As for setting the scene for TBC, it's looking pretty good too. Changes are being made and are being well received, so far. Still saying no changes because someone out there genuinely thinks LFR would be a good idea is definitely a bit of a reach at this point. Ever since BlizzCon 2018, it's never even been on the table, and I think Blizzard is well aware of that. There are some things that I just don't think will ever even come into the realm of consideration. But tell me, how are you feeling about the changes so far being proposed? Happy? Kind of indifferent perhaps? And is this setting the scene for Classic Fresh or just some prep for TBC? Maybe none of the above. Hit me up below, thanks all so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one very soon. If you like what you see, do give the video a like and subscribe, as there will be plenty more to come. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.